going on, everybody? We are back talking more about The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Remake. Today we are focusing on the bosses and how they can actually improve all the bosses in this game. If there's one change that I really hope that they do, it's this one. It'd probably be a mixture of this and add some stuff to Hyrule Field, but primarily this one. Not every single boss in Ocarina of Time is easy and kind of boring, but a lot of them are. I mean, I'd say a good 70% of them are. Most of them has you doing some boring, mundane task over and over again, with little to no challenge. So let's try to make these bosses better. But real quick, we are still trying to reach our goal of 400,000 subscribers. You guys can make that happen today by leaving a like and subscribing. You've all been killing it lately, and we're getting so close to reaching that goal, so thank you so much, and let's jump into the bosses. I want to start off going over the bosses in order that they appear in this game, and I'm talking main bosses first. So first, we have Gohma, which is an incredibly easy fight. You can actually beat this boss in under 30 seconds if you're just somewhat decent at the game. Now in this dungeon, the main item you get is the slingshot, and I feel like the auto lock onto the eyeball just makes this way too easy. So I actually recommend making this room extremely dark, where it's really hard to see, and you have to aim manually and track down the eyeball and shoot it from the sky without being able to lock onto it. Or perhaps it pulls something similar to the spider from Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon, where it's stuck to the webs on the ceiling with its eyes closed in one of the phases, and you have to light your Deku stick with a torch somewhere in the room and ignite the webs that lead up the pillars to the ceiling. In this phase, you'll also be fighting off the babies that it drops down from the ceiling as well. I mean, I would even really like it if they forced you to use the Deku Nuts, which I hardly ever use in this game. Maybe some way to stun it, and that's the only way that it will open its eye. I think these are great changes that can be made without making the boss too difficult, especially since it's the first boss of the game, so I think those are pretty reasonable. Plus, I'd probably make Queen Gohma a lot bigger as well. She seems kind of small. King Dodongo is probably my second least favorite boss in the entire game. It's this big, menacing, terrorizing dinosaur creature, but there's not much to this fight. I mean, it really doesn't even attack. It opens its mouth to breathe fire, but you have a large window to throw a bomb in and then strike them in the head before you have to run around as it tries to roll and chase you. It's a rinse and repeat, and it's over before you know it. One thing the game should do is test you with timed bomb throws. Instead of just chucking a bomb in his mouth after Z targeting where it's almost impossible to miss, maybe there's a phase where King Dodongo actually can go into the lava without taking damage, and he pops his head out very similar to Volvagia, and you have to throw a bomb into his mouth, and maybe you don't even have Z targeting for this, it's just pure aim. Or perhaps he's in a constant roll around the room like that Goron in Goron City, and you have to stop him in a specific spot. Maybe there's lava puddles along the outside, and you have to blow him up into one of these puddles so that way he can sink into it, which is a timed bomb throw. Or maybe they add a new phase, kind of like the Frox from Tears of the Kingdom, where once you put the bomb in his mouth and he blows up, you have to climb up on top of him in order to hit a weak point on his head. That could also be pretty cool. Now, Barinade, the third boss in the game, is actually a pretty good boss battle, all things considered. It uses the boomerang in a really good way, having multiple phases of appendages that you have to cut off, or in order to stun. I'm not really sure that I would change all too much with this fight. I mean, you have to have well-timed boomerang tosses, take out multiple parts of its body, use the boomerang to take out the jellyfish enemies around him. I mean, they really put great usage to this item. I think the only thing that would be really cool here is if they maybe incorporated some of the other items as well, since this is the final boss fight with young Link. Maybe there's some moment where it like buries itself in some hard substance or into the ground and you have to use a bomb in order to dig it out, or maybe use your slingshot for something. But overall, this is actually a really well done boss battle, and I don't have too many complaints about it. So if it doesn't change, I'd be fine. One cool addition they could add is maybe it detonates and tries to blow up Jabu Jabu, and you have to hurry up and escape back to the end, you know, jumping out of his mouth at the last second, and it's shooting like electricity through the dungeon. That could be pretty sweet, but then Jabu Jabu would have to die, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, he doesn't even return as Adult Link, so who cares? Another boss that's done pretty well is Phantom Ganon. Now, Phantom Ganon is pretty much a taste as to what you're going to experience with the real Ganon. It's kind of always been that way, or at least with real Ganondorf. A couple things I would change is one, making the room a lot darker with light coming in from the stained glass windows at the top, and two, maybe adding some more elements to the portrait part. Like, for instance, Ganondorf kind of just flies out of one of the portraits, and you don't even really have to pay attention. Just aim your arrow up at the middle of the stage, and then shoot him when he flies over. Maybe all the portraits change to different types of pictures that do different things, and you have to, like, keep playing memory games with them or something. It's not just him running out of portraits. Maybe there's another one where they all change change into pictures of Ganondorf, and only one is the correct Ganondorf, kind of like the Poe fight before this one. And the Dead Man's Volley is such a classic, such a good fight, even though you do the exact same thing for the final boss. Maybe they do incorporate something like a 1v1 sword duel as well, which would be really cool, because we really don't get that with Ganondorf. But overall, this is yet again another really good fight, and not too much would need to change. Now, unlike Phantom Ganon and Barinade, Volvagia is kind of whack. It's this really small, skinny dragon that's really not difficult whatsoever. It gives you an illusion that you're playing whack-a-mole with already predetermined holes in the ground, and it's not that hard to just find the right one when he pops his head out. And he doesn't even hurt you. Like, for instance, when he swings his hair at you, it does no damage, so there really isn't that much of a threat to this boss. Onyx Primal had a pretty good idea, where there's no longer these dedicated holes in the ground. Instead, it kind of pops out of the dirt like a beast coming out of the ground, and you have to hurry up and run over and hit him with your hammer. Something else I would do is make the boss a lot longer and a lot bigger. He seems more like a mini-boss based on his size. Some other phases they could do is maybe he's under the ground and he's kind of like digging like a mole, and you have to kind of track him down and use the Megaton hammer in order to break him out. Or perhaps there's a phase where he flies above and you have no choice, where you have to shoot him down with arrows. And maybe the lock-on doesn't work, where you have to have good aim. And if you don't shoot him down, he'll continue to stay at the top and rain down boulders. Shoot, if they want to get really crazy, they could even pull a page from Tears of the Kingdom, where he's so big you can actually jump on top of him and ride him and run from the back all the way to the front and take out his head with the hammer and your sword. Now, this could also be said about all the bosses, but wouldn't it be cool if the sage or maybe just the tribe of that area helped you? Like, what if the Gorons actually helped you fight him, since you set them all free in this dungeon in the first place? Maybe there's things that they can do to help, like roll a giant boulder at him or something. I don't know, but something else definitely needs to happen. This boss is a little too basic, way too easy. Shoot, I think I got another idea. What if the last phase, it turns into its skeletal form after its skin melts off, and then you have to still fight him as a skeleton, using the Megaton hammer to break off each segment of his skeletal spine, maybe as he slithers across the ground like a snake, which would be very similar to the boss Moldorm. But to me, there's no boss in the game anywhere near as bad as Morpha. Morpha is such a stupid boss battle. I absolutely dread fighting this thing every single time I replay this game. Not because it's difficult, just because it's so daggone boring. You're telling me this water creature is the one that caused all this havoc in this region of Hyrule for 7 years? In fact, there was a comment from Zio Mario that stated that he wanted bigger scale boss battles, that these forces that decimated the lands for 7 years should be a lot more than just a tentacle with a nucleus. Because this boss is literally just that. It's a tentacle that comes out of the water, and you have to pull the nucleus out with your new long hookshot. And I'm not even entirely sure if you would even need the long hookshot for this. I mean, the nucleus kind of comes so close to you, the regular one would be fine. So what's the point? But then you get about one solid hit on him, he flies across the room, and then it repeats. You don't even get to fight on the main platforms in the center. It's all about just staying on the ledge for the most part. Since Morpha really is just this nucleus that causes the water to form into tentacles, why can't he cause the water to form into different things as well? Maybe a different creature every single time you hit him. It's not just a tentacle. Or maybe the tentacles get way bigger, there's little tiny ones. Maybe he floods the entire room and hides down below the pillars, and you have to chase him down there with your iron boots. I mean, after all, it is the only weapon that you can use underwater, so why didn't they incorporate that? Maybe there's an instance where all the tentacles stretch all along the outsides of the arena, forcing you to jump onto the pillars in the center. They could really make this kind of like Chaos from Sonic Adventure, where it can change into multiple different forms, where you have to shoot your hookshot into these different water forms in order to grab the nucleus. Shoot, maybe there's even one form where it's like a water bird and it's flying around the room and you have to grab the nucleus out of the sky. There's just so much more they can do with this boss, and I'm telling you right now, I will be so disappointed if they choose not to do anything. Bongo Bongo should be the creepiest boss in this game by far. In fact, there's a lot of bosses they can make a lot creepier. This was also a comment from Stoush Catholic that said, yeah, I want more ominous fights. Between the well and the Shadow Temple, these are some of the creepiest moments we've ever had in a Zelda game, so this boss should reflect it. This is still a creepy boss, don't get me wrong. It's a giant, invisible, amputated hand creepy monster, and with realistic graphics, this thing is gonna look terrifying. But at the same time, this is a very easy boss. Plus, I think with that auto lock, which is just making everything so easy now that I think about it, hitting the hands is so quick and simple, and then shooting him in the eye is really not that difficult. Although it's very fun to do. It's just so simple to rinse and repeat and do the same thing. Plus, they don't even utilize the hover boots that you have in this game. I would really love a part where the stage warped into multiple mini drums that you had to platform across, but you had to use your hover boots in a mixture of the Eye of Truth in order to see which drum platforms were real and which ones were fake, and in order to track down Bongo Bongo himself. Also, maybe I'm getting way too carried away here, but now that you have the long hook shot, what if the fight had a second or final phase that took you back to Kakariko, where he tried to escape there again, and you had to chase him back and fight him in the village, where maybe hook-shotting to the roofs in order to reach him, or maybe he even tries to escape to Hyrule Field for a little bit, and you have to chase him down with Epona using the Lens of Truth and using your bow and arrow. I mean, it kind of works perfectly if you think about it. Now, obviously you'll be warped to Hyrule Field, you won't have to walk all the way back, but yeah, that could be a cool secret final phase. And the last main fight we have in the game is Twinrova. It's split into two different phases, and these are pretty unique using your brand new mirror shield, but it uses it in a way that's not used in the entire dungeon. The whole point of the shield was to reflect light. You don't really ever reflect elements, which I think could be another really cool thing to add when the actual Light Temples remake, but that's for another video. This is a really cool concept, but it's just so incredibly easy. I mean, you can literally just stand there holding your shield out and you'll never take damage. And the same thing goes for the second phase, where you just stand there and soak up the elemental attacks into your shield, and you just have to get 3 of them. Now the question is, what else could they add? I'm really not quite sure, to be honest. Maybe they can use a mixture of other items you've gotten in other dungeons, like your bow and maybe even your hookshot for something, or maybe when it comes to the first phase of reflecting the fire or ice, maybe you have to hit certain fire or ice matching elements along the walls that create some type of shield barrier around her, instead of just aiming at the 2 witches every single time. I also think maybe some minions or something chasing you around the stage as you're doing this could be useful, because man, you're just kind of sitting on this giant pillar not really moving. But if I had to pick one thing, I would definitely try to incorporate some other items to this. Maybe instead of jumping over to the ledge to use your sword, there's something that she'll use with her magic to put up a shield and you have to throw a bomb over the top of it or something. Or after you hit her with enough elemental blast, she splits back into 2 and they both fly around towards the top of the stage and you have to use your bow and arrow in order to shoot them both down. I'm not 100% sure, but something needs to make this boss more engaging and definitely more difficult. We then have the final boss with Ganondorf. In kind of a similar situation with Phantom Ganon, it'd be really cool if there was a 1v1 sword duel here. The Dead Man's Volley is so good, and following up with a light arrow is really awesome, especially that one attack where you have to use a charged spin attack in order to reflect the orbs. This stuff is so satisfying, and man, for this game's age, this still holds up so well. But I would love to see a little bit more incorporated into this phase. Like, could you imagine if he brought all the floor back and you had a 1v1 duel with him? Like, oh, that would be so good. A 1v1 sword duel, that is. And we know that he has a horse, not just from Phantom Ganon, but from the one scene of him chasing Zelda and Impa out of Hyrule Castle. What if there was a scene very similar to Twilight Princess, where you got to battle him and his horse with you and your horse, Epona, in Hyrule Field? But I know that wouldn't necessarily work, because doing that would take you out of the castle, which we know he needs to be crushed by the castle in order to turn into Ganon. So I think a 1v1 sword duel could just be enough. Like, for instance, maybe the sword duel's on top of the castle outside before he collapses. It'll be a phase 2, he'll collapse after you defeat him there, and then you'll enter phase 3 against Ganon once the castle does collapse. Now, the one obvious fix for Ganon is to fix the lighting, because it's way too bright, at least in the 3DS version. In the original, it was nice, dark, and gave him more of a creepy look where you could mostly only see his glowing eyes. This fight is also fine, but it could be a lot better. For one, all you do is spam light arrows into his head and just reach around to the behind and use your hookshot or something on his tail, or maybe even the Megaton Hammer, which just isn't anything super interesting. Also, Ganon just feels like he could be way bigger here. In Smash Ultimate, Sakurai does actually make him a lot bigger. At least it looks like he's a lot bigger. That might just be the comparison here with young Link, but yeah, they should make him even bigger, honestly. But if they keep him a similar size, I still feel like they can use his swords more, you know, maybe as a more adequate sword duel. which is still going to be more powerful for Ganondorf. His swords are huge, but yeah, I mean, come on, he's just kind of using his swords for one swipe and that's it. The original Hyrule Warriors does something unique by having you use all of your different items in order to take them out during various phases, which I thought was a really cool concept. So I would love to see something like this brought back, where you have to keep using different items and then at the end use your light arrows. But yeah, they definitely have to keep his same form instead of making him more beast-like like Hyrule Warriors and Twilight Princess, but also he needs to be bigger. Now this was mentioned from somebody in one of my past videos, but this was brought up again from the Battle Cats guy that said that there should be some way to see different alternate endings that tie into the timeline. If you didn't know, the timeline is split into 3 different timelines. One where Link loses and Ganondorf wins, and 2 separate ones where Link wins and comes back as a child, or when Link wins and stays an adult. I would love to see some way to trigger all of these, but at least the one where Link loses, maybe if you lose this fight, maybe it would give you a little cutscene teasing a Link to the past, showing maybe Link leave his house and stuff, like in the raining weather. That'd be so cool, like the very beginning of that game. And same with the other endings, maybe there's teases to Majora's Mask or Wind Waker depending on which ending that you get. Now I do want to briefly go over the mini-bosses in this game. The mini-bosses don't work the same way they do in other Zelda games. For instance, this is not where you get the dungeon's item before going to the real final boss of the dungeon. Instead, these are more like little obstacles or certain enemies that are in your way. For instance, the Deku Tree doesn't really have one. It's more just some Deku scrubs, which you hold up your shield and reflect one of the seeds back. It's kind of whack, so I would love if they added a new one. Maybe some sort of giant Skulltula would be really cool. I mean, there are Skulltulas littered all over this dungeon, so it would make a lot of sense. Maybe using your Deku Stick to burn its webs, or using your slingshot to shoot him off of a wall as he's climbing around the room could be cool. Or they could just pull another Armagora fight, but a lot smaller since it's a mini-boss. Actually, after looking back at this and the whole free aim at the eyeball thing, I think this is what I want Queen Gohma to be like this time around, or at least something similar. The Lizalfos battles in the caverns are fine. I'd much rather have a dedicated single mini-boss, but maybe that they just enhance the combat and make these fights a lot more interesting. I think this could be still good. Dude, I absolutely hate that Octorok mini-boss in Lord Jabu Jabu. It's just so boring, running around in circles and throwing your boomerang at him. It's not the worst thing ever, but like maybe something can change with it. I don't know what they end up doing, but yeah, I just feel like running in circles was just kind of eh. I think for the Forest Temple, the Stalfos could be just like the Lizalfos, being, you know, more combat heavy, you know, changing how the combat works could make these fights a lot more interesting. But I actually recommend they change the pose up, and I'll go over this more when I go over dungeon by dungeon. But yeah, it'd be cool if at least the first 2 poses could warp you to different areas to fight them in a unique way instead of them just spinning around and going invisible. The Fire Temple has these little ember guys, and they could be cool, but daggone it, they are so simple and easy to gimp. You can just stand there, hold a bomb, and throw it at it as soon as it jumps off the pillar to the point where it never even gets to attack. I don't know, I think the concept of this little ember turning into a fire dancer is really unique, and I think it needs to take off of the idea I had for Morpha, where it can morph into different types of dancers or different types of fire creatures. It's something more interesting than just spawning and spinning in circles. For the Water Temple, you definitely have to bring back that Shadow Link fight, but maybe change it up a bit. And maybe after the first phase of him just copying you, he then jumps and does his own thing, and then it's more of a, you know, engaging 1v1 sword fight. And I think it also, once again, matters if they're going to upgrade the combat or not. But I could see this being so much better in a remake. We all know how creepy Dead Hand is, but they could always make this boss battle a little bit more interesting than just letting a hand grab you and this thing slowly waddles on over and tries to bite you. It's just a very simple concept boss battle. They can keep it creepy, but man, I wish they went a little bit further with it. And in the Spirit Temple, the Iron Knuckles are very similar to that of the Dark Nuts, and I really like the concept of them. I just wish they were a lot more difficult. Their swings are so telegraphed and so slow, you can just wail on them without them even getting near you. So I hope they do a little bit more with this, and I think just enhancing the game's overall combat could fix this problem. In fact, you fight one last Iron Knuckle towards the end of the dungeon right before Twinrova, and it ends up being the soon-to-be Sage Nabooru, which should be a lot different than the other boss fights. I kind of wish she was like super really good, and it would have been like a cool boss fight before the boss fight. You fight her several times in Gerudo Desert, and she seems to have some good moves, but as an Iron Knuckle, she's pretty much the same as them all, so hopefully they differentiate her in the final remake. Now, I did want to throw these in just in case, but if they do decide to actually give us the full Ice Temple or the full Spirit Temple, which both were planned in the original versions, let's throw some bosses in there. For the Ice Temple, I would love to see something something like Triforce Heroes, yes, of all games, had this really cool ice snake, and it feels like a complete counterpart to Volvagia. This one's name is Blizzagia, and it actually plays very similar to Volvagia as well, where you have to use your hammer in order to break the ice around its body and also to smash the rock helmet off of his face. Now you get the iron boots in the ice cavern, so imagine if they just did that again, and there's different puzzles and stuff with wind blowing, and even he could blow you away, but you have to use the iron boots not to fall off of the, ice pillar that you're fighting him on, but then you would use your Megaton hammer in order to break his helmet off. It makes perfect sense. So yes, bring back Blizzagia. He's an awesome boss battle. And if they actually come through and make the Spirit Temple as well, which was another scrap dungeon, who knows, maybe that's where we'll see the giant new Skulltula or something like that. John Strimmel actually said, what if for the new Light Temple we had a side-by-side fight with Sheik against a giant Dark Nut or something? I could definitely see it being like a test dungeon like we had in Wind Waker. Against Godan, you pretty much have a final trial with a boss fight against a giant floating hands and head boss, which we kind of already have with Bongo Bongo. But maybe they come up with another giant statue or machine for us to fight as a big test, which would be pretty cool. And especially if we got to fight alongside Sheik, and this is where the first time we actually meet her, right before appearing back in the Temple of Time by the Master Sword, would be so cool. Imagine instead of getting the Master Sword and just reappearing in the Temple of Time, as soon as we pick it up as a child, we're immediately warped into a new dungeon as an adult, and then we have to finish that dungeon to get back into the regular Temple of Time and continue our adventure. Oh, that would be awesome. But once again, temples is for another video. And that other video is next. So if you want to appear in the next video, comment the word dungeon in all caps, followed by your dungeon wish. This could be any change to an existing dungeon or any additional dungeon that you want to see added to this game. Make sure you be specific and be original and be creative, and you could appear in the next video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Nintendo, and I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.